Last week, we talked about why Matten filters might not be as amazing as they can often be touted to be when it comes to air-driven filtration. But this week, we're going to explain why the hype is real. These things rock. Hello everyone, this is Bentley, and today, we're back with the Matten filter. This is the not-so-humble, but super powerful air-driven filtration method that is very popular in certain communities, especially with shrimp keepers. And there's a lot of good reasons why. From a simplistic standpoint, right, let's remember, we're talking about a big wall of sponge with a jet lifter tube. On the back side here, the tube is bringing in water from down here. You got your airline that's going to come in, probably an air stone down here. That's going to help create that upward lift. And then because we're going to this jet lifter style, what's happening is we're creating linear flow across the tank. This sits on one side of the tank, whether it's left or right. Water moves across the tank, down, and is brought in back through here. But unlike a standard sponge filter, because we not only have that linear flow, but we have this massive surface area. We have huge breeding grounds for beneficial bacteria, and also in the case of certain fish and or shrimp, we have lots of area for them to graze on, to find food from, microfauna, all that kind of stuff that's going to grow. Your bacteria that are microscopic organisms we can't see that are actually food sources for things like some of your shrimp, corydoras, a lot of your suckermouth fish, otocinclus, things like that. They can use this area as an efficient feeding ground on top of it being a fantastic filtration method. And because we already have all those benefits, we might as well get into a few more. Unlike the standard sponge filter, we don't really have a gradation in the porosity. Almost always it's going to be something like this, a much finer sponge. And this is really good because one, it's going to polish the heck out of your water. This is going to capture a ton of your detritus particulates and make your water relatively clear. Maybe not as perfectly clear as like the box filter with the super fine floss or under gravel filtration, which is actually phenomenal for giving you really good water clarity. But as far as air-driven filtration is concerned, this is one of your water clarity kings right here. Second reason this is awesome, kind of going back to that linear flow. Now we do need a little bit higher flow rate when we're using one of these style filters. You can bring it down, but it's optimal to have higher flow just because you have kind of a larger tube. This is designed for a 20 long, but most of them are a relatively larger tube to create good water flow. That means we're getting lots of water turnover from air-driven filtration. That's fantastic. But also, because we have that slightly higher water flow, we're just moving more things around the tank more efficiently than that vertical flow that is more common in a lot of our other air-driven filtration, like the box filter, the standard sponge, etc. Another massive benefit, because you have this huge area to capture things. As this starts to clog up down here, it just slowly kind of moves up the sponge as far as the primary flow and where things are getting captured. It takes a very long time for this to get clogged up, which means you don't need to maintain it as often as you do a standard sponge filter or a box filter. This can go for a very long term without having to be maintained. And another benefit is because we have this void back here, kind of similar to how we create the plenum void underneath an underground filtration system, we can actually put things behind the filter that are beneficial. So like if you need crushed coral to buffer your water like I do because there's nothing in your water and you need to control that so that your pH doesn't spike because you have low KH, whatever that may be. Maybe you want some other kind of beneficial thing that sits back here. You want some excess media, maybe, whatever that may be. You have this space where you can hide it and it's not interfering with other things in your tank. Only water is going to touch it. It's not even in your substrate, right? Because this blocks the substrate away. Another thing, you don't necessarily have to have this kit where just friction sits inside. If you're good with DIY, there are a number of kits that come with baffles that will allow you to put glass that you silicone in place, that hold this in place, but more importantly, those baffles can prevent one of the primary problems, which is when you do need to service this, if you have substrate, like you're a shrimp tank, that substrate without a baffle slides into the area in your void back here, right? That baffle in place holds that substrate, and you never have to worry about that problem. It keeps it in place. You just remove this, you go do your service, you bring it back, easy peasy, no problem, right? Another positive. I know, we're going through a lot of positives. Because we have such a large surface area for bacteria. The likelihood of us dealing with some kind of bacterial crash is extremely low. Although, in very low bioloads, we're not necessarily feeding and creating this massive food source, but there's just so much room for bacteria to grow that the likelihood of you having a huge spike happening and overwhelming your beneficial bacteria colony, very, very low. Very, very low, especially if you're doing your standard maintenance. This just has so much breeding ground for that bacteria that you're going to have an extremely healthy colony going, and that colony can fight off a lot of random things. It's unlike small sponge filters, right? They only have so much room. And as you get bigger, yes, of course, you have more surface area, you can do more things, but they don't compare to this. And part of that is because we have this more fine sponge, it creates significantly more surface area. Those coarse sponges have those big open areas, right? Can be really good for making sure you don't block water flow, but what it does cause problems is that there's only so much area for the bacteria to colonize, where this finer sponge has significantly more room. Yes, you are going to pay a bit more for one of these, especially if you need a kit with the baffles, like the corner Matten filter, right, where this is just kind of bent in a U shape. It's just in the corner of a tank instead of taking up the whole side of a tank. But, it's worth it. Honestly, some of the best breeders I know live by these things. A large number of tanks in, say, example, Master Breeder Dean's fish room specifically use the Matten filter because it allows him to hide buffers and things like that back here, have something he doesn't have to maintain super often, but maintains good water flow so that he can have a significantly higher density of fish in the tank, in his raising tank. So he's got lots and lots of fry. This can handle that because it has so much more surface area. It creates a larger beneficial bacteria colony. Standard sponges and box filters just can't do that. The Matten filter can. So it's another massive benefit in comparison to a lot of our other air-driven filtration. The final benefit I'm going to give you also comes down to some of us who are thinking about these specifically for breeding tanks. And that's this. If you've ever tried to catch a fish where you have multiple sponge filters in a tank or box filters, it's easy for those small fish to hide. When this is an entire side of your tank, they can't hide. They just can't. What you really can do, right, is you can basically just back the tube off like this to minimize the amount of under they have, and there's just no place for them to hide. Because this is completely flat, you can easily bring your net down along here and drag it across the tank to catch your fish. If you need to move them to another tank, maybe you're taking them to a local store that you're selling, take them to a swap meet, whatever it may be. If you're a breeder, this is a convenience beyond probably accurate description. You never have to worry about those pesky fish hiding behind a sponge filter under something, using it as protection, whatever it may be. This nice solid wall of sponge prevents that from happening, and now you've just got open tank that you can run your net through to get your fish. Small case, yes, but big benefit if you are that person. If you are in that situation, it's a massive benefit. Finally, the last thing I'm going to say is this. It's sponge and a PVC tube. You don't have to replace any parts. As long as you're maintaining your tank and you're not in super crazy hard water, this will last you for basically ever. This piece of foam will last you 15, 20 years. It's such a low cost in the grand scheme of things if you have a large volume of tanks. Now, yes, standard sponge filters are significantly cheaper, but there is a lot of benefit going with a Matten filter instead for a reasonably small increase in overall cost. Linear flow, higher flow, massive beneficial bacteria surface area, finer foam, so better water quality. Also can act as a feeding ground for a number of different shrimp and small fish. Allows you to hide things in the back. That's 6. Lasts you forever. 7. And if you're a breeder, makes catching those pesky fish you need to take to your local fish store or swap significantly easier. That's 7. Lucky 7. Seems like this is a pretty dang good filtration method now, isn't it? Now, you might ask yourself, all right, Bentley, out of all the air-driven filtration you've talked about, which one is the best? Depends. It really depends. However, I think in many cases, if you are not intending to have a very thick substrate layer to where undergravel filtration is going to be maximized, this is actually the most series of positives that you can get in air-driven filtration. Simple, humble, all-star. That is why so many people rant and rave about how amazing the Matten filter is. Because realistically, they are. That's it. That's all I have for you today. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, give it a little thumbs up, hit the like button. Let me know in the comments down below. Have you used a Matten filter? Have you not used a Matten filter? Are you now immediately considering a Matten filter because of all of the lucky 7 positives I just gave to you, and maybe even a few more that I missed? Is there a positive I missed for all you Matten aficionados? Leave it in the comments down below. I really love hearing from you guys. If it's your first time viewing one of these videos, maybe you're not subscribed, consider subscribing. We do all sorts of tips, tricks, pros and cons, product testing, all sorts of stuff. You actually will see this thing in action relatively soon. It depends. I've got a few projects that are before this one, but this is going to go in a 20 long that I don't want to give away quite yet, but I think it's going to be very interesting. With all that being said, thank you so much for watching, and stay awesome.